Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Long time no see. And today we're gonna have an interesting one, the one which is Conquer My Heart strategy Frostpunk. But this is part two, Frostpunk 2. So, well, it remains one of the most thrilling city buildings games I ever played, and a tense, hard-fought scramble for survival at the frozen end of the world. The Dickens tale, almost a Victorian fable choked in smoke and despair as the children are sent to work in the factories and the dead are eaten, all in the name of survival. There is no room for sunshine, and a apocalyptic storm is coming that will plummet temperature below minus 100 degrees Celsius. There's no room for descent. Crush it, or else the world will crush you. I worried the sequel would jeopardize that by swamping it in the complexity of the urge to do more, to do bigger, be better, to be sequel, in the other words. And 11-bit didn't assuage my fears by talking about squabbling political factions being the focus on the game, which sounded about as much fun as Prime Minister question to me. I worried that 11-bit would overcomplicate it and lose the thrilling essence of the Frostpunk, but it hasn't. Cheers for that. Frostpunk 2 has managed the remarkable. It's managed to grow in every direction and dwarf the original while still retaining the breathless experience of playing it, that inescapable sense of chilling on. I don't think I breathed at all over the 5 chapters on the 17 odd hours the story took me, which came to think of it's a long time to hold one's breath. Moreover, it's gotten bigger without getting flabbier. By adjusting a whole bottom layer of micromanagement it is no longer needs, and letting you govern in the broaden strokes. Frostpunk 2 has done away with enormous amount of FIF and freed up you think about more interesting things. And it's all needed. All needed. All needed almost for everything. And, well, it's all hooded almost to the perfection as well. Throughout, it seems more complex. I never find myself at a loss about what to do or very confused, which I believe signals a developer that has learned an incredible amount from its first game and then gone to great lengths to show it. Frostpunk 2 is so many ways is XQCQ. But let's break it down a little. The biggest change between the two games in conceptual, in Frostpunk 1, you were a band of few survivors establishing their large city on the frozen earth, fighting each day to keep it yourselves alive, collecting armfuls of coal, the nearby snow, dragging fallen trees into your settlement to chop up for wood. Gradually, something like a city emerged, and eventually you'd pit it against a huge storm, forever answering the game overarching questions of can you survive. But in Frostpunk 2, it's different. The question is not wherever you can survive, but how. It zoomed out. Day-to-day survival is given. More or less, the call is still a fundamental terror. And your control cities, they are incomparably larger than the ones you finished for the first game with. While everything about Frostpunk is on a larger scale, it plays in weeks and counts the people and their depth in the hundreds and thousands, and harvests huge quantities of resources in order to cope with them. Cities are built not building by building, but district by district, allowing you to slap them down in bulk and expand much more easily and to manage them more easy too. You'll have housing neighborhoods and the industrial zones and the resource harvesting areas which will can suck up and multiple resources nodes. You can expand them all, not to take in more area and to allow space for more special research buildings in them. It's much more neater and a quicker way to build a city and much more less daunting way to control it at size. Should you want to adjust the amount of power district draws during a moment, especially cold weather, for example, you can simply move a slider around until and it lands on their input-output sweet spots you're after. That means you're adjusting only several things over the entire segment, which is much more easier than selecting the individual buildings and tweaking them by that. On the top of that, you are no longer to build roads or any transport links, save you establish in the frozen tundra beyond and it's enormous help. All transport infrastructure in your settlement is automatically taken care of and will appear whenever you plonk new districts down. It saves a great deal of time and means you can focus more on careful political balance within. Political factions can ruin you if maltreated, standing protesters across your city and shutting down districts if things get really bad, putting the incredible strain on your settlement, just like strikes in real life, I suppose. The factions are a bit like the unions of society, only amped up considerably by a dramatic effect. There is a lot of them, many more than I encountered during my campaign, but the ones I interacted with were Frostlanders, Pilgrims, Star Wars, and the New Londoners, which I believed in their own only conductory thing. More often than not, appearing involves passing along. There is where the game nearest come into play, the council chamber. It's a building you can see inside for the first time in the series. There is a chamber with the people milling around, and it is here where you try to pass your laws. I say try because you need a majority vote in order to pass a ruling, and getting a majority tends to involve negotiations with other factors to get them on side. And what they want in return varies. Perhaps they will want a law passed return, or a building researches and built, or you bound to fund them. You'll be looking something aligns your values naturally, but Frostpunk 2 has been designed in such way that isn't possible, and typically you'll be under so much pressure you won't have any option but to just acquit that. Okay, so overall, Frostpunk 2 is a trial. You will lose some of the close feel the original as the strategy zooms out and blur up rapid civilian toiling in the cold or digging a snowy trench for others to get throughout. But Frostpunk 2 was never meant to replace that game. It was meant to lead on from it, and it does that superbly with some wonderful nods to the original too. Anything it loses, it gains back via new features tenfold. Visually, it is spectacular. The way housing districts sprout like moss of the walls of deep crevices is endlessly screenshotable, and the way the screen's darkness and the glow trails of activity ridden with the tensions rises is enormously dramatic. Coupled with the sweeping orchestral music, the Industrial Revolution, it all makes for an incredibly impactful package, and touches like the charismatic tenor announcements. Remember, all new products have been tested on convex and are safe for use. Highlight of the level of detail and reactivity not to find in Frostpunk before, right? Now, when the story finishes, which is admittedly ended on the anticlimax given moments that preceded, there is endless mode with a half dozen customizable scenarios to keep you playing on. If you don't fancy playing the story again to achieve less unsavory outcome, it's way better. Frostpunk 2 is Frostpunk at its best, and everything as a sequel should be. So I strongly recommend them, and this is the Italian of the sequels. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. Bye.